Guys, so today what we're going to be doing is looking a little bit at how we started to deal with foreign countries immediately following World War II and some of those issues that we had with that. So you should have a graphic organizer that looks a little bit like this. It says Foreign Relations Problems After World War II at the top. It's got 4 boxes on the side down here. So what we're going to be doing is seeing kind of some of the problems that we have and the solutions that go with that. So as we are looking at this now, we've got 2 distinct ideologies, right, in the world. We've got the American ideology, where we are promoting capitalism and democracy all across the world, trying to spread the word of democracy, make the world safe for it. And on this side, we've got communism. Right? So communism in the Soviet Union says that people shouldn't own private property, that we should all kind of be equal, and like the government should run everything. And kind of the 2 sides of this coin here is, you know, the United States thinks that communism takes away personal freedoms and individuality, whereas communism says capitalism makes the rich richer and the poor poorer, and that's a big major issue, right? So these 2 ideologies are kind of the polar opposites. But what we're going to see, if you can imagine, like 2 magnets, like that can't touch, right? Because they're at the same side, so they're like fighting against each other. That's kind of what's going on in Europe. Okay, so we've been afraid of communism in the United States for a long time, since the 1920s, but it's really going to kind of rev up immediately following World War II. So let's go ahead and jump right in. All right. So the first major issue that we're going to see is with the countries of Turkey and Greece. Okay, so let's look really carefully here. All right. So this is Eastern Europe. Soviet Union's up here, right? These countries over here are Soviet-controlled countries. So Yugoslavia, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Albania. These are all countries that are controlled by communism, by the Soviet Union, okay? Then we have Greece right here. We've got Turkey right here. Okay, where are they in relation to the Soviet Union, right? Think about this. They are really, really close. So the problem that we have here is that the Soviet Union is kind of threatening a communist takeover, all right? Also within these countries, there are communist revolutionaries who are actually trying to overthrow the government in the countries and establish a communist government. Well, Greece and Turkey were our allies during World War II. So do we want Greece and Turkey to become communist? No, we don't, because if they do, that's going to cause a major problem for us, right? So our solution here is Truman comes up with what he calls the Truman Doctrine, okay? So the Truman Doctrine essentially says we will give any aid to any country that's trying to resist communism. So if Greece and Turkey decide that they want to resist the communist takeovers in their country, we'll give them money and weapons and men and help them out. The goal here is something called containment, okay? So this is the containment policy. So think about what this means, all right? So basically, what we're trying to do is stop the spread of communism in Eastern Europe, right? So let's imagine that communism, rather than being an ideology, is soup, okay? So we've got our soup here. I've got my tomato soup, right? Tomato soup, red, like communism. So I've made this giant pot of tomato soup. Okay, like 5 gallons of it on my stove, make it for dinner. Yum, oh, it's so good, I love it. And, you know, I can't eat 5 gallons at a time, so what do I do with it? Well, I want to put the tomato soup in the refrigerator, right? Well, I'm not just going to take the tomato soup and pour it into the refrigerator, right? Why wouldn't I just pour the soup in there? What will it do? Well, it's going to make a mess and get all over everything, right? Well, I don't want to do that. So what I want to do is I want to contain it. So I put it in a container, like my little mason jar here, and it's nice and safe and secure. It's, you know, it's not going anywhere, right? I'm not throwing it out. I'm not getting rid of it. I want to keep it, but I don't want it to make a mess and spill all over everything. So if the tomato soup is communism, what the United States is saying is we're not trying to get rid of it where it already is, right? We're not going to tell Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union that they can't be communist. If they want to be communist, that's fine. They're already communist. We're not going to go in and invade them and tell them that they can't. But we don't want them to make a mess all over everything else. We don't want them to make a mess all over our Mediterranean takeout, right? So if Turkey and Greece our Mediterranean food, we don't want to pour the tomato soup on top of our Mediterranean food, right? We want to stop its spread so it doesn't make a mess, a communist mess, all over the rest of Europe. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here with the Truman Doctrine, is stop the spread of communism. So sure enough, we do send aid to Turkey and Greece, and they don't become communists. Next problem that we have here, sorry about the bell. Next problem that we have here is the economy of Europe after World War II. So much like World War I, there's a lot of issues, right? There's high unemployment, high crime, there's refugees, so people who had been in concentration camps are now flooding back into Eastern Europe. There also been a really tough winter that year, starvation is high, fuel is not really existent, people can't heat their homes, and the winter is already bad. So this is a major problem, right? We don't want to see another economic depression, because that's what happened after World War I. Well, here's the other problem. What kind of people live in this kind of situation, right? These people are desperate, right? And what are desperate people going to be tempted by? Maybe an ideology that says everybody shares everything and the government will take care of your needs and you don't have to worry about, the wealthy people of society or the poor people of society. What ideology is that? It's communism, right? So we are fearing that if Europe continues along this path of high unemployment, high crime, high refugees, high starvation, the economy is going to collapse and people are going to start saying, well, we need to turn to something that's going to make us better. And that's going to be communism, right? And we want to stop the spread of communism. We don't want it to spread all over Europe. So what we decide to do is come up with an economic solution that might be able to backtrack all of those issues, okay? So a guy in our government whose name is Marshall comes up with this plan where he says, what we're going to do is we're going to send aid to any European country that will accept the money, right? We will give you money to jumpstart your economy, and then you can get back on track and prove that democracy and capitalism work, right? That's kind of the idea behind this. In total, we gave about $12.5 billion. It's a lot of money, right? But we gave it to these countries that said, if you're willing to ask for it, we'll give it to you. You can get your economy back on track. Make sure that your people are, able to take care of themselves, and we'll kind of go from there, right? Now, here's the question. What kind of people won't accept free money, right? Maybe communist people? Yeah, maybe. So here's what happens. So this is the Marshall Plan here. If you look at the key here, this is all of the money per million of people who accepted that money. What countries are accepting it? Right? We see Turkey, Greece, right? Those are the countries who already helped. Germany, or West Germany, rather. United Kingdom, France, Portugal, Ireland, Italy. Countries that we are willing to work with. Who's not taking any of it? Soviet Union, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Finland. All countries that just happen to be controlled by the Soviet Union, right? The Soviet Union is not going to let any Eastern European accept this money, okay? Western Europe gets back on track. Places like the United Kingdom and France, they're able to rebuild, get their economy jump-started. Places like Poland do not. They suffer, right? So this is going to be a really big deal, all right? Where Western Europe is doing okay, Eastern Europe is going into the crapper, right? So this is going to lead us to the issue with Germany, all right? So let's remember what happened to Germany at the end of World War II, okay? We took Germany and we said we're going to divide it into 4 occupational zones. United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union, all of the Allied countries, will control and occupy each one of those sections. And what we will do is we will help build it back up. We will get the government stable, the economy stable, and eventually we'll give them all back to the German government, and Germany will be able to run itself again. We did the same thing with the city of Berlin. We cut the city of Berlin into 4 pieces, and each one of those allies took a piece of Berlin, right? Eventually, all of the allies, Britain, France, and the United States, give West Germany back, okay? The Soviet Union does not. they keep East Germany all to themselves. You see on this map where it's red? That's all Soviet controlled. Where is Berlin? Outside of Europe. East Germany. It is in Soviet-controlled Germany. Well, this might be a problem. So here's what happens. Soviets sent out a big memo one day. Sorry again for the bell. They're like, hey guys, so all of the roads into West Berlin, major traffic issues, like they are all shut down. You just cannot get into West Berlin. All 80 miles of road just happened to, go up in flames all at once. Yeah, that's good, right? No, it's not. The problem is West Berlin is still depending on those Allied countries for food, fuel, medical supplies, all of these things that we've been providing in order to get them built back up. And the Soviets have just said, you can't get into Berlin by road. What are we going to do, right? Again, this could lead to desperation. It could lead to West Berlin falling into communist control. We don't want that to happen. So we've got to figure out a solution to get fuel, food, and medical supplies back into Berlin. So our solution is to do what is called the Berlin Airlift, okay? So basically, if you look at this map here, what we do is we fly planes from the part of West Germany that we control, right? So you see this is all of the Allied controlled parts of Germany. The red section is the Soviet controlled, right? We fly in from British controlled Germany. We land into Berlin in all of these parts of Berlin, right? So you see these are the parts of Berlin that we control. So we land into these parts of Berlin. We don't even actually land. We just fly over. We get low enough that we can drop the supplies in and take right off again, right? So we don't use roads, we use the air in order to drop supplies in and out of Berlin. We keep this up for 327 days, almost a full year. A little under 300,000 flights all through the year, getting planes in and out and in and out and in and out. Now, here's a question. If the Soviets really wanted to stop us, why didn't they just shoot our planes out of the air, right? Like they could have. If they had wanted to, they could have shot the planes down. But why didn't they? What's that going to lead to? It's going to lead to war, right? That's an act of war to shoot a plane out of the air. What do we have that the Soviets don't have? Atomic bomb, right? We've got the atomic bomb. They don't have it yet. If they start a war with us, they saw what happened to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They're not going to want an atomic bomb dropped in Moscow, right? So they kind of let up. They let this happen for a while. We are supplying West Berlin with everything they need. We can't get into East Berlin because that's Soviet controlled. But eventually, the Soviets are like, you know what? You're right. Our bad. Let's open up all the roads again. Construction's all back to normal. You can get back into Berlin. So eventually we do kind of fend the Soviets off with the airlift. It's successful, and they open up Berlin again. However, later in the 1960s, there's going to be a wall built that divides East and West Berlin and East and West Germany. We're going to talk a little bit more about that the rest of the week, so just kind of keep that in mind. This is a huge morale victory for the U.S. It kind of says, look, capitalism's better than communism, right? Yay! What? In a lot of ways, this is also the first battle of the Cold War, which we'll talk more about that in class as well. All right, the last problem is alliances, all right? So as the Soviet Union is starting to grow into power, a lot of countries in Western Europe are starting to go, they've already creeped into Eastern Europe. What if they start creeping into Western Europe? And maybe the Soviets go into France and Italy and Britain, and we don't want that to happen. So a lot of these countries are starting to feel there's a fear of invasion or attack by the Soviet Union. So solution is, let's come up with an alliance. So we formed the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, otherwise known as NATO. And the goal of NATO is to kind of all of these nations helping each other out and protecting each other. This is a defensive alliance, okay? There is no war, right? We are doing this on the defense, right? Making sure that nothing happens. The idea being if all of these countries get together and say we're going to be a part of an alliance, maybe it'll kind of scare off anybody that would want to hurt them, right? 10 Western European nations, plus the United States and Canada, are all a part of this, at least at the beginning. It will eventually grow and include Latin American countries and other parts of the world, but at the beginning, it's just these countries. The Soviets respond by issuing the Warsaw Pact, which says, well, fine, you can have an alliance, we can have an alliance too. And our alliance is the USSR, the Soviet Union, and all of Eastern Europe. Is that really an alliance, though? Because let's remember, the Soviet Union controls Eastern Europe, right? Like, it's like, hey, Romania, do you want to be in an alliance with us? Sure, Soviet Union, because you control us, right? It's like saying, hey, North Carolina, do you want to be in an alliance with South Carolina? Well, yeah, because we're all the United States. So the Warsaw Pact puts on a show. It's making you pretend that nobody, like, of course Eastern Europe is free, right? But everybody knows it's not really free. So that's kind of what this whole issue is here. So you can see this is on the left. These are some of the treaties of NATO at the beginning. The green places are NATO sponsored. So you see Turkey, Greece, Italy, Austria, West Germany. In mind, West Germany, Great Britain, Denmark, Netherlands, France, Spain, and Portugal. The countries in yellow are countries who remain neutral. So these are Yugoslavia, Switzerland, Ireland, and other ones, Sweden and Finland up here. And then the Warsaw Pact is the Soviet Union. And then again, of course, the countries they control, Poland, East Germany, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Albania, okay? So that's kind of the way it looked at the time. In 2009, this is the countries that were added to the Warsaw, or to NATO. So you can see that it expands to include some Eastern European countries by the 21st century, all right? So this kind of wraps up looking at some of these problems and solutions. We're gonna get to see kind of how all of this plays out in class, and does it really work? What's going on, what's going to be the effects of this. So that's where we are. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.